There are moments in life when heaven does not whisper, does not wait, and does not gently knock, but urgently pleads. This is one of those moments. Right now, beyond what your eyes can see and your ears can hear, a rare and sobering scene is unfolding in the spiritual realm. Archangel Michael, the great defender and warrior of heaven, and Jesus himself are both calling out to you with a single, unified cry, "Do not walk away." This is not symbolic language. This is not exaggeration. This is a direct and serious warning wrapped in divine mercy. Because if you turn away now, if you ignore this moment, you may enter a silence where heaven no longer speaks the way it once did. You may be wondering why such urgency surrounds this message. Why would heaven beg? Why would Jesus, full of love and authority, and Archangel Michael, assigned to moments of spiritual warfare and destiny, appear together in this hour? It is because you are standing at a dangerous spiritual threshold, one that many cross without realizing it until it is too late. Heaven is not reacting to your past, it is responding to your present decision. And that decision is whether you will stay receptive, obedient, and open, or whether you will slowly drift away under the illusion that there will always be another chance. This message is not for everyone. It is for the one who feels tired of waiting, weary of believing, or tempted to step back because the journey hath been harder than expected. It is for the one who has prayed before and felt answers, but lately senses distance, silence, or confusion. It is for the one who feels an inner resistance even listening right now, as if something is urging you to click away, to postpone, to ignore what is stirring in your spirit. That resistance is not random. It is the very reason heaven is intervening. Jesus is not begging out of weakness. He is pleading out of love. There is a difference. Love speaks urgently when loss is near. Love raises its voice when danger approaches quietly. And Archangel Michael does not appear unless a battle is already in motion. His presence signals that something precious is under threat. Your connection, your calling, your ability to hear heaven clearly. Walking away does not always happen in a dramatic moment. Often, it begins with delay, with distraction, with a quiet decision to disengage just a little. But heaven knows where that road leads, even when you do not. There are seasons when God allows silence for growth, but there are also moments when silence becomes a consequence of repeated refusal. That is what makes this warning so serious. Heaven is not saying you will be abandoned. Heaven is saying that your sensitivity, your spiritual hearing, could become dull if ignored long enough. The voice that once guided you, comforted you, and corrected you can become faint, not because God stopped speaking, but because the heart stopped listening. This is why this message feels heavy and sacred at the same time. You were not meant to stumble upon it. You were led here, and the timing is intentional. Heaven is drawing a clear line. Stay, listen, and receive, or turn away and risk losing clarity you may not easily recover. Jesus knows how close you are to pulling back. Archangel Michael knows the forces pressing against your resolve. Together, they are intervening before a door quietly closes. There is something they want to reveal to you, but revelation is reserved for those who remain present. Truth unfolds for those who stay. Guidance is released to those who do not run when conviction rises. If you walk away now, you are not just leaving a video. You are stepping away from an alignment moment designed specifically for you. Heaven does not beg often. When it does, it is because the stakes are eternal. You may feel unworthy, unsure, or unconvinced that this message applies to you. That uncertainty itself is a sign. Divine warnings often arrive disguised as discomfort. They confront before they comfort. But understand this clearly. This is not about fear. This is about preservation. Heaven is fighting for your ability to hear clearly in the days ahead. There are decisions coming that will require discernment. There are crossroads approaching that will demand spiritual clarity. And losing heaven's voice is not something you can afford. So hear this with your spirit, not just your ears. Do not walk away. Do not dismiss this as coincidence. Do not tell yourself you will return to this later. Later is often the enemy of obedience. Right now is where heaven meets you. Right now is where mercy speaks loudly. Jesus is calling you closer, not to burden you, but to protect you. Archangel Michael is standing guard, not to frighten you, but to warn you before damage is done. What they are about to reveal cannot be received by a distracted heart. It requires presence. It requires humility. It requires staying when walking away feels easier. This moment is a turning point, and the fact that you are still listening means heaven has not given up on you. The plea is real. The warning is real. And the invitation is still open, if you choose to remain. There is a moment when heaven pauses, not because it is unsure, but because it is waiting for you. This is that moment. Right now, everything feels ordinary on the surface, yet something deeper is unfolding beneath it. You are listening to this not by accident, not by chance, but because a spiritual alarm has gone off in the unseen realm. Heaven has slowed the noise around you so you can hear what truly matters. This is the space where decisions are made, not with words, but with attention. What you choose to do with this moment will echo further than you realize. Many people believe walking away is a dramatic act, a loud rejection, a clear decision. But most of the time, it is quiet. It is subtle. It happens when the heart grows tired of hoping, when the mind grows weary of waiting, when the soul starts telling itself, maybe this isn't for me anymore. That is how people drift without ever meaning to leave. Heaven knows this pattern well. That is why it intervenes before distance becomes separation, before silence feels permanent, before the voice you once recognized becomes unfamiliar. You may feel pulled in two directions right now. One part of you senses that something important is being said, while another part feels restless, skeptical, or impatient. That tension is not a flaw, it is a sign. It means something is being contested. When heaven draws near, resistance often rises at the same time. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because what is at stake is valuable. Your attention is being challenged because your alignment matters. Understand this clearly. Heaven is not demanding perfection from you. It is asking for presence. It is not asking you to have everything figured out. It is asking you not to disengage. There is a difference between doubt and withdrawal. Doubt can be addressed. Questions can be answered. But withdrawal closes doors quietly. When people stop leaning in, they stop hearing not all at once, but gradually. Guidance fades. Eviction softens. Direction blurs. And one day, they wonder why heaven feels so far away. This is why this moment is sacred. Heaven is giving you the chance to choose attentiveness over distraction, to choose openness over retreat, to choose to stay engaged even when you do not yet understand everything. Jesus is not calling you to pressure you. He is calling you to anchor you. And Archangel Michael is not present to intimidate you, but to guard what is under threat, your spiritual focus in a season where distractions are designed to pull you away. You may be tempted to treat this like background noise, something to listen to while doing something else. But heaven is asking for something deeper than that. It is asking for agreement. Agreement is not loud. It is intentional. It is the quiet decision to say, I am listening. When you give heaven your attention, even imperfectly, you create space for revelation to flow. But when attention is fragmented, messages become harder to receive. This is why engagement matters more than people realize. When you respond, when you acknowledge what is stirring within you, you are not interacting with content, you are responding to a call. That is why I want you to do something intentional right now. If this message is speaking to you, if you feel that inner nudge that says this is not random, make it visible. Let your action reflect your alignment. Like this message as a sign that you are choosing to stay attentive. Share it if you sense that someone else is standing at the same crossroads. Leave a comment, not for visibility, but as a declaration that you are not walking away from what heaven is saying to you. And if you have not yet subscribed, do so now, not out of habit, but as a commitment to remain connected to messages that sharpen your spiritual hearing. These actions may seem small, but spiritually, they are significant. Heaven responds to movement. When you lean in, even slightly, clarity follows. When you resist the urge to disengage, strength rises. This is how alignment is built, not in one dramatic leap, but in intentional steps. And right now, you are being invited to take one. There is something powerful about choosing to stay when it would be easier to leave. It sends a signal beyond the natural realm. It tells heaven, I am still listening. It tells the unseen forces that your focus is not easily stolen, and it prepares your spirit for what is coming next. Because what is about to be revealed is not meant for passive observers. It is meant for those who choose to remain present when the message grows weightier. You may not yet see why this matters so much, but you will. The reason heaven is slowing you down now is because the next steps require clarity. The next season requires discernment. And the next revelation requires a heart that has not shut itself off. This is the moment where you decide whether you will stay aligned or slowly drift back into noise. Do not underestimate the power of this pause. Do not rush past it. Heaven is watching, not to judge you, but to respond to you. And as you stay, as you listen, as you choose engagement over escape, you are positioning yourself for what comes next, a deeper unveiling that will only be released to those who did not turn away. There is a pattern in the way heaven speaks that many people do not recognize until it is too late. Before silence ever arrives, there is always a final moment of clarity, a moment where the message is unmistakable, where the warning is gentle but firm, where love speaks louder than comfort. This is that moment. Heaven does not withdraw without first reaching out, and what you are hearing right now is not routine encouragement. It is a mercy-filled alert. When heaven speaks like this, it is because something is about to shift, one way or the other. Throughout spiritual history, heaven has always warned before withdrawing. Not because God desires distance, but because He honors choice. Divine communication is relational, not forced. When the heart leans in, heaven responds. When the heart repeatedly turns away, heaven grows quiet, not out of anger, but out of respect for human will. This is the part few people understand. Silence is rarely sudden. It is usually the result of ignored invitations, postponed obedience, and delayed response. And yet, even now, heaven is speaking one more time. Jesus knows how easy it is for the human heart to grow tired. He knows how waiting can wear down faith, how unanswered questions can slowly erode trust. That is why His voice comes with tenderness and urgency intertwined. He is not accusing you. He is calling you back into alignment before disconnection sets in. This is not about punishment. This is about preservation. Heaven is trying to protect your ability to recognize truth, to discern direction, to hear clearly in a season where many voices compete for your attention. This is also why this message carries weight. You are not just being informed, you are being warned with love. When divine nudges are ignored long enough, the heart adapts to distance. Eviction fades. Discernment dulls. What once felt spiritually obvious becomes confusing. And the most dangerous part is that it feels normal. Heaven is intervening now because you are closer to a turning point than you realize. One step closer to clarity, or one step closer to quietness. Archangel Michael's presence in this moment signals spiritual conflict. He does not appear for casual matters. He stands where decisions carry consequence. There is pressure around you that is subtle but persistent, urging you to disengage, to grow indifferent, to treat this moment lightly. That pressure is not imaginary. It exists because something valuable is at stake. Your spiritual sensitivity is being contested, and heaven is stepping in before erosion becomes loss. Jesus is calling your attention not to frighten you, but to awaken you. There is still time. There is still access. There is still openness. But this window is not meant to be ignored. Divine messages are not infinite in their intensity. When heaven raises its voice, it is because the heart is at risk of drifting beyond the range of clarity. What you do with this warning matters more than how you feel about it. You may feel a heaviness in this moment, not because something bad is coming, but because something serious is being addressed. Weight does not always mean danger. Sometimes it means importance. Heaven is treating you as someone whose choices matter, someone whose alignment has impact, someone whose ability to hear and respond is critical for what lies ahead. This is where honesty is required. Ask yourself, not out loud but within, have you been pulling back? Have you been postponing obedience? Have you been telling yourself you will reconnect later, when things feel easier or clearer? That inner hesitation is exactly what this warning is addressing. Later is not guaranteed clarity. Sometimes later is silence. And heaven, in its mercy, is reaching for you now. Do not misinterpret this moment. You are not being threatened. You are being invited to stay awake, to remain sensitive, to keep your heart open even when answers are not immediate. This is the kind of moment that separates those who drift from those who remain anchored. And remaining anchored does not require perfection. It requires willingness. What comes next will only make sense to those who stay present through this warning. Revelation follows attentiveness. Clarity follows humility. And what Jesus and Archangel Michael are preparing to reveal is not surface-level encouragement. It is direction meant to protect your future. Hold on. What comes next changes everything. You will be glad you stayed for what is about to be revealed. Before we move forward, this moment must be sealed intentionally. Type "I am listening" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 314 is now activated. As this warning settles into your spirit, hear this clearly: what you are receiving right now is not meant to stop with you. I feel led to tell you that every seed sown into this mission becomes light for someone standing in darkness, oil for someone whose faith is running dry. The word declares that when you cast your bread upon the waters, it returns in its appointed time, and right now, God is inviting you into that return. I am speaking to you directly because heaven is stirring generosity as an act of obedience, not obligation. When you support this work through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, the link is in the description, and the QR code appears on screen. You are helping this message reach souls who are one warning away from silence. This is not a donation. It is a prophetic response. I bless every giver now, that your obedience opens doors, restores hearing, and multiplies peace in your life. Act now. Release the seed and let heaven move through you. To understand why this moment carries such weight, you must understand who stands watch over it. Archangel Michael is not a symbolic figure, nor is his presence ever casual. He is assigned to moments of spiritual conflict, to thresholds where destiny is contested, and to seasons where protection must intervene before irreversible loss occurs. When Michael stands near a human decision, it is because that decision echoes beyond the visible world. His role is not to speak often, but to act decisively when the integrity of a calling, a covenant, or a connection to heaven is under threat. Michael is the guardian of spiritual boundaries. He stands where lines are drawn between alignment and drift, obedience and compromise, attentiveness and indifference. His presence now reveals that what you are facing is not merely emotional fatigue or mental distraction. It is a spiritual crossroads. There is pressure around you, unseen but persistent, attempting to pull you out of position. Not violently, not obviously, but gradually. And gradual loss is the most dangerous kind, because it often goes unnoticed until clarity is gone. Heaven assigns Michael when resistance intensifies quietly, when the enemy no longer needs to attack openly, but only needs you to lose focus, when distractions are enough, when weariness does the work that force once tried to do. Michael's role is to intercept that process before it completes. He does not come to condemn, he comes to defend what heaven has already invested in you. Your sensitivity, your discernment, your ability to recognize truth when it speaks. This is why the warning feels firm. Michael does not negotiate with erosion. He confronts it. He stands between what is sacred and what seeks to diminish it. If you have felt unusually distracted, spiritually dull, or emotionally detached from things that once stirred your spirit, that is not random. It is evidence of a slow-moving conflict. Heaven has noticed, and it has responded. Michael also appears when timing becomes critical. There are moments when delay becomes dangerous, when indecision begins to cost more than action, when staying neutral quietly sides with loss. This is one of those moments. You are not being rushed into fear, you are being urged into awareness. Awareness is protection. Awareness is power. And Michael's presence signals that awareness must be activated now, not later. You may not feel like someone standing in a battle. You may feel ordinary, tired, unsure, even disconnected. But that is precisely when spiritual opposition works best, when it convinces you that nothing significant is happening. Michael stands to counter that deception. He stands to remind you that your spiritual state matters even when your emotions say otherwise. Heaven does not measure importance by how you feel, but by what is assigned to you. There is also something else Michael guards: access. Access to divine communication. Access to clarity. Access to instruction. When people drift, access narrows. Not because heaven withholds, but because alignment weakens. Michael intervenes to keep pathways open, to protect channels of communication that are in danger of closing through neglect. This is why his presence now is mercy, not threat. Jesus and Michael together reveal a powerful truth. Love and protection operate in unity. Jesus calls you closer. Michael guards the space where that closeness can be maintained. One invites, the other defends. Together, they are ensuring that you are not overtaken by subtle forces designed to pull you away without resistance. Heaven is not overreacting. It is responding precisely to the level of risk involved. You may not have realized how much you matter in this moment, but heaven does. You may not see the full scope of what is ahead, but heaven does. And because heaven sees it, it acts. Michael's assignment is evidence that what you are carrying, what you are connected to, and what you are meant to hear in the days ahead must be preserved. This is not about creating fear. Fear weakens discernment. This is about sharpening awareness. Awareness strengthens resolve. When you understand that there is something worth guarding, you become more intentional about staying aligned. Michael's presence is a signal that you are worth defending, that your connection to heaven is worth protecting, that your ability to hear clearly has value beyond this moment. So do not minimize what is happening. Do not treat this as ordinary encouragement. Heaven does not deploy guardians for ordinary moments. This is a line-crossing point, and Michael stands to ensure that you do not cross unknowingly. His warning is silent but firm. Stay alert, stay engaged, stay receptive. The ground you are standing on is contested, but it is not lost. And as long as you remain present, heaven remains near. There is a way Jesus speaks when a moment is tender, and there is a way he speaks when a moment is critical. Right now, his voice carries both. This is not the voice that condemns, and it is not the voice that withdraws. It is the voice that reaches out one last time before distance sets in. Jesus did not raise his voice to scare you. He raises it to reach you. When he calls like this, it is because love sees something slipping away and refuses to stay silent. Many people misunderstand divine silence. They assume it means abandonment, rejection, or punishment. But long before silence ever arrives, Jesus speaks with clarity and urgency. Silence is never his first response. It is the final result of repeated turning away. What you are hearing now is the opposite of silence. It is mercy in motion. It is Jesus making sure you cannot say later that you were never warned, never invited, never called back. His voice in this moment is not harsh. It is weighted. It carries the gravity of consequence, not the threat of judgment. Jesus knows the human heart well. He knows how easy it is to slowly disconnect while telling yourself everything is fine. He knows how faith can become routine, how prayer can become delayed, how obedience can become conditional. That is why he speaks now, before the distance becomes comfortable. There is a subtle danger in spiritual familiarity. When you become used to hearing God, it is easy to assume his voice will always be there in the same way, at the same volume, with the same urgency. But relationship does not work that way. Communication thrives on response. When response fades, intimacy weakens. Jesus is aggressing that very risk, not because he wants control, but because he desires closeness that remains alive, not assumed. This is the part many struggle with. Jesus' love is unconditional, but intimacy is not automatic. Nearness is sustained through attention. Fearing is preserved through humility. When those things begin to erode, Jesus speaks before withdrawing, not to punish, but to awaken. His warning is an act of care. It is the sound of heaven saying, "Do not lose what you do not realize you are about to forfeit." You may feel a mix of comfort and discomfort listening to this. Comfort because his voice feels familiar. Discomfort because it feels confronting. Attention is intentional. It is the space where truth works. Jesus is not accusing you of walking away. He is preventing you from doing so. He is not saying you are lost. He is ensuring you do not drift. There are moments when Jesus allows people to choose distance, not because he desires it, but because he respects free will. But before that moment comes, he always speaks clearly. He reminds. He calls. He reaches. That is what is happening now. You are hearing the voice that comes before the quiet. The voice that said, "Stay. Listen. Do not pull back now." This is not about fear of losing God. It is about the danger of losing sensitivity. When sensitivity dulls, conviction weakens. When conviction weakens, direction blurs. When direction blurs, choices become reactive instead of guided. Jesus is addressing the root before the fruit ever appears. He is protecting you from a future where you wonder why clarity faded and peace became harder to reach. His voice also carries sorrow, not disappointment, but concern. Concern that you might underestimate this moment. Concern that you might think you have more time than you do. Concern that you might confuse patience with postponement. Jesus knows the difference, and he knows that later obedience is not the same as present obedience. This is why his voice sounds closer, firmer, more intentional now. If you listen carefully, you will notice something else. His voice is personal. This is not a general message spoken into the air. It feels directed because it is directed. Jesus speaks to individuals even when many are listening. He knows exactly where you are standing internally. He knows what you have been considering stepping back from. He knows where fatigue has tried to speak louder than faith. And he is meeting you there. This moment is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to anchor you, to remind you that heaven has not moved away from you, but it is asking you not to move away from it. Jesus is offering you the gift of awareness before consequence, the gift of clarity before confusion, the gift of closeness before quietness. Do not rush past this voice. Do not treat it lightly. Voices like this do not come often, and they do not come without reason. Jesus is still speaking because there is still something to protect, something to preserve, something ahead that requires you to hear clearly. His voice now is not a sign of danger. It is proof of love that refuses to let you drift without calling you back. Walking away from heaven is rarely a sudden decision. It is almost never a dramatic moment where someone declares they no longer care. The true cost of walking away is paid slowly, quietly, and often without awareness. That is what makes it so dangerous. By the time many realize what they have lost, the loss has already settled in. Heaven is speaking now because it wants you to understand the cost before it is paid, not after. When people begin to pull back spiritually, the first thing they lose is not faith, it is clarity. Decisions that once felt guided start to feel confusing. Choices that once carried peace begin to feel heavy. Direction becomes blurred, and discernment weakens. This does not happen because God suddenly stops caring. It happens because distance affects perception. Just as physical distance makes voices harder to hear, spiritual distance makes divine guidance harder to recognize. The second cost is peace. Not surface calm, but deep, anchoring peace. When alignment weakens, anxiety often replaces assurance. The soul begins searching for stability in places it was never meant to depend on. Distraction increases. Restlessness grows. Even moments of quiet feel unsettled. Many mistake this for stress or fatigue, never realizing it is the symptom of drifting from divine alignment. Heaven is warning you now because it sees this chain forming before you do. Another cost is sensitivity to correction. When you walk closely with heaven, correction feels like guidance. When distance grows, correction feels like resistance. Conviction that once felt loving starts to feel intrusive, and so it gets ignored. Over time, the heart adapts. What once felt wrong begins to feel normal. What once stirred urgency begins to feel optional. This is not freedom, it is numbness. And numbness is one of the greatest losses a soul can experience. There is also a cost to timing. Heaven operates in seasons. Certain doors open only within certain window. When alignment weakens, opportunities can be missed. not because God withholds them, but because the heart is no longer positioned to recognize or respond to them. Walking away does not cancel destiny, but it can delay it, and delays often bring unnecessary struggle. Heaven is trying to spare you from that. Many people believe they can step back temporarily and return later without consequence. But spiritual sensitivity does not work like a switch. It is more like a muscle. When exercised, it strengthens. When neglected, it weakens. The longer it goes unused, the harder it becomes to re-engage. This is why heaven is urgent now. It is easier to stay aligned than to realign after long neglect. There is also an unseen cost, the grief of heaven. Angels are not indifferent to human choices. When someone drifts from their calling, there is sorrow, not anger. Heaven grieves not because it loses control, but because it sees potential delayed, purpose burdened, and clarity exchanged for confusion. Archangel Michael's presence earlier was not only about protection, it was also about preventing that grief from becoming reality. Walking away also affects prayer. Prayer becomes harder, not because words disappear, but because confidence fades. People begin to doubt whether they are heard. Faith becomes effort instead of flow. What once felt like conversation feels like monologue. And slowly, prayer becomes less frequent. This is one of the most painful costs, because prayer is where restoration begins. Heaven wants to keep that door open for you. Another cost is identity clarity. When aligned with heaven, you know who you are even when circumstances are unstable. When alignment weakens, identity becomes tied to performance, approval, or outcomes. Self-worth fluctuates. Comparison increases. The inner compass loses its north. Heaven is calling you back now because it wants to preserve the truth of who you are, not let it be reshaped by noise. Perhaps the greatest cost of walking away is that it rarely feels dramatic enough to stop. There is no alarm, no obvious collapse, no instant consequence. Just gradual dulling, gradual distancing, gradual forgetting of what once mattered deeply. And one day, you look back and realize you are far from where you intended to be. Heaven is intervening now because it loves you too much to let that happen unnoticed. This part of the message is not meant to shame you. It is meant to sober you. Awareness is an act of mercy. Understanding the cost before paying it is a gift. Heaven is not saying you have already lost something. It is saying you are being protected from losing it. You are still here. You are still listening. That alone means the door is open. But openness requires response. Not perfection. Not certainty. Just willingness to stay engaged. The cost of walking away is real, but so is the power of choosing to remain. And heaven is making sure you understand both before the next step is revealed. There are moments in life when the soul stands quietly between two directions, even if the mind has not fully recognized it yet. These moments do not always announce themselves with dramatic signs. Often, they feel like inner tension, restlessness, or a subtle unease that refuses to go away. This is how divine crossroads usually appear. Not with noise, but with pressure. Not with fear, but with weight. And if you are feeling that weight now, it is because you are standing at one of those crossroads. One of the clearest signs of a divine crossroad is confusion that arrives without an obvious cause. You may notice that things which once felt clear now feel uncertain. Decisions that used to come easily now feel complicated. This is not because you have lost wisdom, but because heaven is drawing your attention to the need for realignment. Confusion at a crossroad is not a failure. It is an invitation to pause and listen more closely. Another sign is spiritual fatigue that does not improve with rest. You can sleep, slow down, and step back, yet still feel drained in a way that rest does not fix. This kind of weariness is not physical, it is directional. It comes when the soul is misaligned, when effort replaces flow, when obedience is delayed. Heaven uses this discomfort to signal that something needs adjustment before you move forward. Repeated inner nudges are another sign. You may feel the same thought returning again and again. The same conviction. The same gentle reminder that something needs attention. You may try to dismiss it, distract yourself, or reason it away, but it persists. That persistence is not your imagination. It is heaven's way of saying this decision matters more than you think. There is also the sign of resistance at the edge of breakthrough. Often, right before clarity arrives, resistance increases. Distractions multiply. Doubt speaks louder. Motivation dips. This is not coincidence. When you approach a moment of alignment, opposition tries to slow you down, not with force, but with fatigue. Heaven intensifies its communication at these moments because the cost of turning away becomes greater. Emotional heaviness without clear explanation is another indicator. Not sadness exactly, but a sense of weight. A feeling that something is unresolved. This weight is not meant to crush you. It is meant to anchor you. It is the gravity of importance. Heaven is signaling that what you choose next will shape what you experience later. You may also notice a heightened sensitivity to spiritual messages. Words seem to land deeper. Certain phrases linger in your thoughts. Messages like this one feel unusually personal. That is because at crossroads the heart becomes more receptive. Heaven draws closer when decisions approach. What feels intense now is actually precision. Heaven is narrowing the focus so you do not miss the moment. Another sign is the temptation to retreat. When crossroads appear, the instinct to avoid decision often follows. You may feel drawn to disengage, delay, or numb yourself with distraction. This is not because you are weak. It is because choice carries responsibility. But avoidance does not remove the crossroad. It only prolongs the tension. Heaven is calling you to face the moment, not flee from it. Pay attention also to what feels costly right now. At divine crossroads, the right choice often feels heavier than the wrong one. Staying engaged feels harder than walking away. Listening feels more demanding than ignoring. That does not mean the easier path is the right one. It means the easier path leads away from growth. Heaven never disguises the cost, but it also never hides the reward. What makes this crossroad especially significant is that it is not only about what you do, but about how you listen. This is a hearing crossroad, a moment where your sensitivity to heaven is either strengthened or weakened. The decision is not dramatic on the surface, but its effects are lasting. Choosing to remain attentive keeps channels open. Choosing to disengage slowly closes them. Heaven is not pressuring you, it is positioning you. Crossroads are moments of invitation, not threat. You are not being nudged or feeling uncertain. You are being honored with choice. Heaven trusts you enough to place you here, aware and awake. That trust itself is a sign of your value. This is why this moment feels personal. Because it is. You are not here by accident. The signs are not random. The wait is not meaningless. Heaven is asking you to recognize where you stand. Not with fear, but with honesty. Not with perfection, but with willingness. The crossroad does not demand that you see the whole path ahead. It only asks that you choose attentiveness over indifference, presence over retreat, alignment over comfort. The next step will become clear once this choice is made. So pause here. Let the signs settle. Recognize the moment for what it is. You are standing at a place where direction is being set, not forced. Heaven is near. The invitation is open. And the choice, quiet, powerful, and sacred, rests with you. There are revelations that are spoken loudly, and there are revelations that are guarded until the listener is proven willing to stay. What is about to be revealed belongs to the second kind. This is not hidden because heaven is secretive, but because truth of this depth cannot be received by a distracted or half-present heart. Jesus and Archangel Michael are revealing something together that is rarely spoken of openly, not because it is forbidden, but because it is costly to hear. It demands responsibility. It demands response. The hidden revelation is this: heaven does not only speak to guide you forward, it also speaks to preserve what is already alive within you. Many people believe divine communication exists only to give new direction, new instruction, or new promises. But one of heaven's most urgent purposes is preservation. Preserving sensitivity, preserving clarity, preserving connection. And this is where many unknowingly falter. They seek new words while neglecting the condition required to hear any word at all. Jesus is revealing that the greatest danger in this season is not open rebellion, but gradual disengagement. Not loud rejection, but quiet withdrawal. The enemy does not need you to hate God, only to stop listening closely. Because when listening weakens, obedience weakens naturally. And when obedience weakens, alignment fractures without noise. This is the silent erosion heaven is intervening against right now. Archangel Michael's involvement reveals another layer of this truth. There are forces actively working to exhaust your spiritual attention. Not through fear, but through overload. Too many voices. Too many options. Too much noise. Michael's presence signals that what you are facing is not just personal struggle, it is strategic pressure. Pressure designed to make attentiveness feel expensive and disengagement feel like relief. Here is the revelation many are not prepared to hear. Relief is not rest. Disengagement is not peace. Silence is not healing. These substitutes feel comforting in the moment, but they hollow the spirit over time. Jesus is revealing that true rest comes from alignment, not avoidance. True peace flows from presence, not withdrawal. And heaven is asking you to discern the difference now, before the wrong choice becomes habitual. This revelation also explains why staying feels harder than leaving, why listening feels weighty, why attentiveness feels demanding. It is because staying keeps you in the flow of responsibility. Leaving numbs responsibility temporarily. But numbness always comes at a cost. Heaven is revealing that the weight you feel right now is not burden, it is importance. It is the gravity of something meaningful being entrusted to you. There is also a promise hidden within this revelation. For those who stay, who listen, who resist the urge to disengage, heaven restores what fatigue tried to steal. Clarity returns. Sensitivity sharpens. Communication deepens. What felt distant begins to feel near again. Not because circumstances change, but because alignment does. This is the reward of presence. Jesus is revealing that many prayers go unanswered not because heaven is silent, but because attention has been divided. When focus returns, answers follow more easily. When humility increases, guidance becomes clearer. Heaven is not complicated, but it is relational. And relationships require attention. Michael's role here is to guard this restoration, to protect the process of realignment from interruption, to stand against the forces that would try to pull you away right as clarity is about to return. This is why staying now matters more than ever. The closer you are to breakthrough, the stronger the pull to disengage. This is not coincidence. is pattern. His revelation also reframes urgency. Heaven is not rushing you. It is warning you about timing. There are seasons when alignment matters more than action, when listening matters more than doing, when staying matters more than moving. This is one of those seasons, and those who recognize it will emerge with renewed discernment, while those who ignore it will wonder why clarity became harder to find. If you feel a quiet stirring as you hear this, that is confirmation. Confirmation that this revelation is for you, that you are among those being called to stay awake, not drift, to remain present, not retreat, to guard your hearing as something sacred. Hold this moment carefully. Do not rush past it. What Jesus and Archangel Michael are revealing now is not information. It is protection. And if you remain just a little longer, what follows will not only make sense, it will strengthen you in ways you did not expect. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed. Type I remain in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 619 is now activated. As this revelation settles, I need to speak to you directly. What you are receiving here is living water, and living water is meant to flow, not stop. When you sow into this mission through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, the link is in the description and the QR code appears on screen. You become a channel through which this light reaches other souls standing at the edge of silence. I feel led to tell you that God is watching who responds in moments like this, not out of obligation, but out of obedience. Scripture declares that those who water others will themselves be refreshed, and this is that moment. This is not a donation. It is a prophetic act that keeps heaven's voice moving across the earth. I speak blessing over every giver now. May your hearing sharpen, your peace multiply, and your alignment deepen. Act now, and let your obedience speak louder than words. There is a moment after every divine message when heaven becomes quiet, not because it has finished speaking, but because it is waiting. Waiting does not mean absence. It means attention. Heaven leans enduring these moments, watching not with judgment, but with expectation. This is that moment. Everything that has been revealed so far now rests on a single truth. Heaven responds to response, not to intention alone, not to emotion alone, but to action that confirms alignment. Many people believe that hearing a message is enough, that understanding equals obedience. But spiritual movement does not happen through awareness alone. Revelation opens the door, but response determines whether you walk through it. Heaven has spoken to you clearly, deliberately, and personally. Now the responsibility shifts, not as pressure, but as partnership. What you do next matters more than how inspired you feel right now. Throughout Scripture and spiritual history, nothing changed until someone responded. A call was given, but destiny moved only when someone said yes. A warning was issued, but protection activated only when someone listened. Heaven does not force alignment. It invites it. And invitation always carries choice. Right now, you are choosing, not with words but with posture, with attention, with willingness. Your response does not need to be dramatic. Heaven is not asking you to solve your entire future in one moment. It is asking you to anchor yourself in this one. To say, I am here. I am listening. I am not disengaging. A decision alone shifts spiritual atmosphere. It keeps channels open. It strengthens sensitivity. It signals readiness. This is why delay is more dangerous than doubt. Doubt keeps you engaged. Delay quietly pulls you away. Delay convinces you that you can respond later without consequence. But later often carries less clarity, less urgency, less sensitivity. Heaven is asking for response now because now still holds the weight of conviction. Now still carries the sharpness of awareness. Now is where alignment is easiest to reclaim. Response also restores authority. When you respond intentionally, you step out of passivity. You move from being influenced to being aligned. Resistance loses power when response is chosen. Distraction weakens when intention becomes visible. Heaven honors movement because movement reflects trust. Even small movement. This is where action becomes spiritual, not symbolic. I want you to mark this moment deliberately. If this message has stirred something in you, do not let it pass in silence. Like this message as a sign that you are choosing to stay present. Share it if you sense that someone else is standing at the same crossroads and needs this warning. Leave a comment, not to be seen by others, but as a declaration before heaven that you are responding. And if you have not yet subscribed, do so now as a commitment to remain connected to messages that sharpen your spiritual hearing. These actions are not about engagement metrics. They are about alignment markers. They make an internal decision visible. Heaven responds to that visibility with reinforcement. Clarity begins to return. Peace starts to settle. Sensitivity sharpens. Not all at once, but steadily. You may wonder why something so simple matters. It matters because spiritual drift often begins with silence. Silence in response. Silence in agreement. Silence in acknowledgement. When response is restored, drift is interrupted. An interruption is often all that is needed to change direction. There is also something else happening beneath the surface. When you respond, you resist the subtle pull to disengage. The temptation to scroll past, to move on, to forget this moment loses its grip. Response anchors memory. It preserves impact. It keeps the message alive beyond the moment it is heard. Do not measure this moment by how emotional you feel. Measure it by direction. Seeds do not feel dramatic when planted, but they are alive the moment they are placed correctly. Your response is planting alignment back into its rightful place. Growth follows placement, not feeling. Heaven is not asking you to carry this alone. Once response is given, support follows. Strength follows. Reinforcement follows. This is the rhythm of divine partnership. God speaks. You respond. Heaven moves again. Its cycle is being restored right now. You are closer to a shift than you realize. Often, the strongest urge to disengage appears just before clarity breaks through. That is why staying now is critical. That is why response now is powerful. You are not late. You are not disqualified. You are positioned. Hold on. What comes next will bring resolution to what has felt unsettled and will remind you why heaven spoke so urgently in the first place. You did not stay by accident. And you will understand very soon why this response mattered. When you choose to stay, when you resist the urge to disengage and remain attentive, something quiet but powerful begins to happen. Heaven does not rush in with noise or spectacle. Instead, restoration unfolds gradually, intentionally, in ways that reshape your inner world before they ever touch your outer circumstances. This is what happens after you stay. Not instantly, not dramatically, but faithfully. The first thing that begins to return is clarity. Not answers to every question, but a steadiness of direction. The fog that once made decisions feel heavy starts to lift. You may not subtly know the full path ahead, but you regain confidence in the next step. Confusion loses its authority. Discernment sharpens. You begin to sense what aligns and what does not without forcing it. This clarity is not intellectual. It is spiritual, and comes from restored alignment, not from effort. Along with clarity comes peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on circumstances improving, but the kind that settles even when nothing around you has changed yet. This peace is the assurance that you are no longer drifting, that you are back in position, that heaven's nearness is no longer in question. Anxiety may still try to speak, but it no longer dominates. Peace becomes the louder voice. Another shift begins quietly. Communication deepens. Prayer starts to feel less strained. Not because your life is suddenly easier, but because access has been restored. The sense of speaking into emptiness fades. You may notice that guidance comes more naturally, through thoughts that feel anchored, through scripture that lands with precision, through moments of insight that arrive without struggle. This is not coincidence. It is the fruit of staying. Heaven also begins to restore confidence, not pride, but spiritual assurance. Assurance that you are not forgotten. Assurance that your attention matters. Assurance that your obedience, even when imperfect, is seen and honored. This confidence steadies you. It keeps you from overreacting. It keeps you from doubting every step. It allows you to move forward without constantly looking back. There is also a renewal of sensitivity. Things that once stirred your spirit begin to do so again. Conviction feels constructive instead of condemning. Correction feels like guidance instead of resistance. Your heart becomes responsive rather than guarded. This sensitivity is one of the greatest gifts of staying, because it protects you long term. It keeps you alert without making you anxious, aware without being overwhelmed. Heaven also begins to repair what fatigue tried to damage. Emotional weariness does not disappear overnight, but strength returns in layers. Motivation resurfaces. Hope regains credibility. What once felt heavy begins to feel purposeful again. You may notice that you are less tempted to numb yourself with distraction, less drawn to escape, more present, more grounded. This is restoration in motion. Another subtle change takes place. Your perspective shifts. You begin to see past delays differently. What once felt like abandonment starts to look like preparation. What once felt like silence begins to reveal itself as protection. This does not erase disappointment, but it reframes it. And reframing restores trust. Trust that heaven was not absent but intentional. Staying also realigns your timing. When alignment returns, delays lose their sting. Waiting becomes bearable because it is no longer confusing. You may still be waiting, but you are no longer wondering. That difference changes everything. It keeps you steady when outcomes are slow. It preserves faith when progress is unseen. Heaven also restores joy, not necessarily excitement, but quiet joy. The kind that comes from knowing you are where you are meant to be, even if you do not yet know where you are going. This joy is resilient. It does not depend on validation or results. It flows from alignment, and it strengthens you more than motivation ever could. Perhaps the most important restoration is this: trust in hearing again. You begin to trust that when guidance comes, it is reliable. That when conviction rises, it is loving. That when direction unfolds, it is safe to follow. This trust heals the fear of missing something, of choosing wrong, of falling behind. You are no longer afraid of silence, because you know you are positioned to hear. What happens after you stay is not instant transformation. It is sustainable restoration. Heaven rebuilds gently so that what is restored lasts. Nothing is forced. Nothing is rushed. Alignment is strengthened, not strained. You may not notice all of this at once. Restoration often reveals itself in hindsight. One day, you realize you are no longer as anxious. Another day, you notice you are no longer as confused. Another day, you recognize that peace has quietly taken root. This is the work of staying, and heaven rejoices in this process, not with spectacle, but with affirmation. Staying is seen, staying is honored, staying is rewarded with what cannot be manufactured: clarity, peace, sensitivity, and trust. You did not stay for nothing. What follows your decision to remain is not loss, but renewal. And this restoration is not the end. It is the foundation for what comes next. There is a moment just before a decision settles, just before direction locks in, where everything becomes quiet, not empty, but focused. This is the final whisper before choice becomes consequence. Heaven does not shout here. It does not pressure. It does not rush. It speaks softly, clearly, and with deep intention. This is that moment, the space where love waits for your response without force, and truth stands without disguise. This final whisper is not meant to introduce something new. It is meant to confirm what you already know deep within. By now, something inside you recognizes that this moment matters. Not because of fear, but because of gravity. You feel it in the stillness, in a pause, in the way this message lingers rather than passes. That lingering is the whisper. Is heaven saying, "This is real. This is important. Do not dismiss it." Heaven understands hesitation. It understands questions. It understands weariness. What it does not ignore is avoidance. This whisper comes not to condemn uncertainty, but to confront retreat. There is a difference. Uncertainty gives you certainty. Retreat slowly closes the heart. This is why heaven speaks now, gently but firmly, before retreat hardens into distance. You may be tempted to minimize this moment, to tell yourself that you have heard similar messages before, to assume that this is simply encouragement meant to make you feel better. But something about this feels different, more focused, more personal. That is because it is not general inspiration. It is directional clarity, and directional clarity always feels weightier than comfort. The final whisper carries assurance, not threat. Assurance that heaven is still near. Assurance that you are not disqualified. Assurance that staying has already shifted something. But it also carries responsibility. Responsibility to honor what had been revealed. Responsibility to guard your attentiveness. Responsibility to not return to old patterns of disengagement once the moment passes. Heaven is not asking you to make a lifelong vow right now. It is asking you to honor the next right posture, to remain receptive, to stay aware, to choose presence over numbness. These choices may seem small, but they shape direction more than dramatic declarations ever could. This whisper also reminds you that walking away is rarely about rejecting God. It is about choosing comfort over conviction. And conviction is uncomfortable not because it is wrong, but because it calls you higher. Heaven is not calling you higher to burden you. It is calling you higher to protect you from settling into less than what you were created to carry. There is tenderness in this moment. Heaven is not angry with you for moments of distance. It is hopeful that you will recognize how close restoration already is. You are not standing at the edge of loss. You are standing at the edge of confirmation. Confirmation that staying was right. Confirmation that listening mattered. Confirmation that your sensitivity is still alive. The whisper also carries warning, not of punishment, but of consequence. Not to scare you, but to sober you. Every season of clarity must be stewarded. What is received lightly is lost easily. Heaven is reminding you to treat this awareness as sacred, not casual. To protect it from noise. to nurture it with intention. You may feel a sense of resolve forming now, a quiet determination rather than emotional intensity. That resolve is healthy. It is rooted. It is sustainable. Heaven prefers this kind of response because it lasts beyond moments of inspiration. It carries you through ordinary days when decisions are quiet but consistent. This is where many miss the power of the moment. They expect fireworks when heaven offers firmness. They look for emotion when heaven gives conviction. But conviction is what anchors you when emotion fades. And heaven is anchoring you now. The final whisper also carries gratitude. Gratitude that you stayed. Gratitude that you listened. Gratitude that you did not walk away when it would have been easier. Heaven notices perseverance in attention just as much as perseverance in action. You are seen here. Nothing dramatic needs to happen now. No announcement. No way. Just recognition. Recognition that this moment was a turning point. That something subtle but significant has shifted. That you are leaving this space more aligned than when you entered it. Heaven is quiet now because it trusts you with what has been said. Silence at this stage is not absence. It is confidence. Confidence that you will carry this forward. Confidence that you will guard what has been restored. Confidence that you understand the weight of what you chose. The whisper fades not because heaven is gone, but because the message has landed. And as you move forward, you will realize that what once felt distant now feels reachable again. Not because everything changed, but because you did. This is the final whisper before decision settles, and you are not alone in it. Heaven remains near, attentive, and ready for what comes next. This is where everything comes together, not with noise, not with urgency, but with assurance. What began as a warning now settles as a promise. Heaven did not speak to frighten you, but to keep you. It did not call you back to overwhelm you, but to restore you. And now, as this message reaches its close, one truth stands clear above all others. Heaven never begged you to stay unless you were worth protecting. You were never moments away from abandonment. You were moments away from clarity. The urgency was not about fear, it was about timing. Heaven saw a narrowing path and stepped in before it closed. Jesus did not plead because he doubted you. He pleaded because he believed in what could be preserved. Archangel Michael did not stand guard because you were failing. He stood because something precious was still alive and worth defending. Look back over what has been revealed. You were warned not to walk away, not because you were lost, but because you were drifting toward quiet erosion. You were reminded that silence does not arrive suddenly. It settles slowly. And you were shown that staying, even when it felt heavy, was already restoring alignment. None of this happened by accident. Every part of this message was layered intentionally to bring you to this point of peace. Now hear this clearly. Heaven is not disappointed in you. Heaven is encouraged by you. You stayed. You listened. You responded. Alone shifted the outcome. You are not leaving this moment weaker than you arrived. You are leaving steadier, more grounded, more aware, more aligned than before. And that matters more than emotion ever could. The assurance heaven offers now is simple and powerful. Your ability to hear has not been lost. Your sensitivity has not been taken from you. Your connection has not been severed. It was protected because you chose presence over retreat. And choice carries forward. It does not expire when the message ends. It becomes a posture you carry into daily life. There will still be ordinary days ahead. Distractions will still exist. Fatigue may still visit. But you are no longer unaware. Awareness has been restored. and awareness is one of the greatest forms of spiritual protection. You now recognize the signs of drift before they take hold. You know the weight of staying, and you understand the cost of walking away, not with fear, but with clarity. Evan's tone now shifts from warning to blessing, not because danger never existed, but because direction has been corrected. You are back in alignment, and alignment attracts grace. Grace strengthens endurance. Endurance preserves connection. This is the cycle heaven wanted to restore in you. Carry this message gently but seriously. Do not turn it into pressure. Let it become grounding. When you feel tempted to disengage in the future, remember this moment. Remember that staying brought peace, not burden. Remember that attentiveness restored clarity. Let that memory guide you back into presence again and again. Jesus is not watching you anxiously. He is walking with you patiently. Archangel Michael is not hovering in warning. He is standing down because the ground hath been secured. Heaven is not tense about your future. It is hopeful, and that hope rests on the fact that you listened when it mattered. As this message closes, receive this final blessing with intention. Type "I stay with heaven" in the comments if this message has sealed something in you. Blessing code 842 is now activated. As this assurance settles over you, I need to speak to you with clarity and authority. What heaven poured into you through this message is meant to reach far beyond you, like fire spreading from torch to torch. When you release a seed through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, the link is in the description, and the QR code appears on screen. You are placing oil in the lamp that keeps this light burning for others standing at the edge of silence. I am speaking to you directly because obedience in moments like this opens rivers, not trickles. The word declares that those who sow generously reap generously, and this is that living promise in motion. This is not support. It is alignment with a divine assignment. I bless every giver now. May your obedience multiply clarity, protect your hearing, and unlock peace in ways you did not expect. Do it now. Release the seed, and let heaven move through your hands.